Welcome to Doll Alchemy. Today's video is a little bit special. It is the very first doll that I've done for a commission for an art trade with an old friend. The requested character was Yuna from Final Fantasy X, which, full disclosure, I know nothing about. Video games isn't my thing, but it's certainly one of the things my friend is passionate about. But it's a very interesting outfit, and I was eager to take on the challenge. I decided to use the Aurora doll that came in the Comfy Princess pack with Jasmine that I'd had. And I would be using the boots that came with an old Anna doll. So I'm just going to do the normal process where I cut off all of her hair, and then I'm going to pop her head in some boiling water so I can soften it up and remove the head from the body without breaking the neck peg. While the head is still warm and soft from the boiling water, that's probably the best time to go ahead and remove all of the remaining hair and glue from inside of the doll head. I have a tool from the Doll Planet that I use to pull out all of that, the old hair and the gunk. But you could probably do this with any number of needle nose pliers. Now that she's bald, I'm going to remove her factory makeup with 100% acetone. Sometimes it's hard with, especially the face molds where the smile is molded in and you can see the teeth. It's a little difficult to get into the crevices to get out all of the old paint. So it's handy to have the pointy type of Q-tips. So I'm going to go ahead and paint her scalp brown because Yuna's hair is like a medium brown, and I'm careful not to paint over the holes from the last hair job because it's very difficult to reroot these Disney dolls. Their heads are a lot harder than Monster High or Ever After High, and I don't want to break too many rerooting needles. So while that was setting, I used epoxy sculpt to cover Anna's old boots and make the soles of the boots thicker and round out the fronts of the boots so that they look closer to what Yuna wears in the video game. I know for whatever reason, epoxy sculpt is toxic on some level and you're not supposed to handle it with your bare hands, but I cannot mold anything through gloves. It just doesn't work. I have to be able to feel it. So I use tools for as much of the work as I can, and I do use the pads of my fingers to smooth things out, but don't follow me if you're going to do this at home. I'm a terrible example. Wear gloves if you are able to, because I know that you aren't supposed to handle it with your bare hands. While I had the epoxy sculpt out, I did also use it to give the doll a small boob job. just because it would make it easier to layer the shirt on the doll later on. Yuna's sash is made out of a few pieces of yellow ribbon, and the top part is also pink ribbon. And I've laid out the pattern based on pictures that I've found on Pinterest mostly, and other parts of the internet, and I'm just freehand painting the pattern. So here it is. It's not perfect, but at this size it'll do. I also made the back part, the fancy back part of the sash, out of the same ribbon. It's been folded over and sewn to maintain that sort of shape, and I've painted it using the same colors as I did the front of the sash. Once that was finished, I began work on Yuna's purple skirt, which is like a mid-length to her shin pleated skirt, and it has this really cool swirly star pattern on the front. So I went ahead and painted that down, and then I pleated the skirt and sewed it together. I borrowed the Velcro off of an old doll outfit, so it's perfectly proportioned for her skirt. Off screen, I spray painted her boots entirely black, and I'm dusting them with black pan pastels to make them matte again. And while I had the pan pastels out, I started her face up. So I'm just using the neutral tones now to try and match this pretty good drawing of Yuna's face, the curvature of her face and the layout of her eyes and such. I ordered a custom blend of hair colors for this doll, and this is what she looks like after reroot. I boil washed, which just means I poured boiling water over her hair and alternated that with ice cold water to get it to set. And once it was dry, I pinned it out of her face, and I started adding in, the more fine details of the face. So blush, lipstick, and eventually her eyes. For the shading on her face, I've used soft pastels like pinks and maroon colors, and for her lips and the outline of her eye shape, I've used watercolor pencils. After a few layers of chalk pastels and watercolor pencils and Mr. Super Clear, building up the aspects of her face up. So right now I'm painting in the whites of her eyes. Using pearlescent Angelus paints, I'm going to paint in her unique set of eyes. Yuna's right eye is green and her left eye is blue. This is the end result of her face up. Not too bad. Could have been better in my opinion, but I didn't want to jinx it. And this is what her hair looks like after her haircut. This was a high temperature blend of hair, so I was able to use my curling iron to make her hair do the little flip on the edge there. Off screen, I very painfully assembled the beaded earring, or I don't really know what that is. It's like a long earring paired with 3 other smaller earrings that are made out of beads on her right ear. So I made those off camera and I pinned them directly into her ear. So Yuna's shirt defies all physical logic. You can get away with that in video games, but it's pretty hard to do that in real life. So I've layered her shirt. I had to glue it directly onto her body. I didn't want to have to do that, but I've layered it as close as I can get it to the original picture. It's not possible to sew something that small and have the fabric lay like it does in the video game. But I've added fabric to the bottom of the yellow sash so that I didn't have to make like a full shirt and it would lay nicer on top of the skirt. So that's what I'm doing now. I sewed the back of the sash directly to the sash itself so that it wouldn't fall off. And she's coming along. She's pretty much halfway done at this point. The only thing that she's missing are her fancy sleeves. So in order to get the gradient of pink to white on her sleeves, I had to experiment hand dyeing white fabric with RIT dye. So I rolled up a piece of white fabric that I had folded over, and it turned out pretty good. Not too bad. I had to let it dry for a day, and then there were only a couple of parts where I felt like the gradient matched. It wasn't so stark, the difference. So I cut out those pieces so they were long enough to go from her wrist to like mid-arm. And what I'm going to do now is sew the seam so that it grips her arm a little bit, and then the sleeve fans out in like a rectangle. I don't know what that's called. I'm sure it's like an actual style that's based on a real thing in Japanese culture probably. But so that's what I've done here. I've just sewn a simple single seam around. I'm going to cut off the excess, and then I'm going to flip it right side out, and I'm going to press the whole thing together because the sleeves aren't open all the way. They open a little bit at the wrist, but they're pretty much closed. So the way I managed to do that, I have fray check all along the outer seam of the sleeves, on the upper part of where it'll go on her upper arm, and then where the sleeve opens outward. So off camera, I used my hair straightener and I pressed it all together, and the glue stuck to itself, luckily, in the front. So the seam is closed there where it needs to be, and it's open where it needs to be open. Next step was to sew in the purple ribbon that goes around the edge of the sleeve. And I also added in the little beads that are in the reference picture on the bottoms of the ribbon. The last thing that we need to do is to add in the accessories that are attached to the sash. So there's 2 bamboo looking ropes that come across the front of the sash, and then attached to that is, I think it's a hibiscus. It's a pink flower, and then there's those 2 blue cords, I'm not sure what you would call them, that I've made off screen using beads again. And the hibiscus itself, I just printed on regular paper, and I've added scotch tape in a couple of layers on both sides so that it's not going to peel or fall apart. So I'm just going to glue that on. And now that that's secure, we can attach her sleeves. In addition to her clothes, I also had to make Yuna's staff, which I had a friend make the topper part out of a pattern he found with his 3D printer. So thanks so much, Tom. It came out great. And then I just made the the actual staff part out of a dowel and some refurbished Lego pieces and a bead. And this is the finished product. At last, she is complete. Here is Yuna of Final Fantasy X. So I hope you enjoyed this making of video. I hope I did Yuna justice and that her new owner will love her as much as I had fun making her. If you like my channel, please like, subscribe, share it so that I can continue to make more content. And have a great day. Thanks for stopping by to watch.